Hi everybody, it's Kirsten outside today. So I'm sorry if my dogs walk by because they're outside right now too. But today we're just going to read the first part of chapter 6 because it's kind of a long one. So here we go. Chapter 6. The Reverend Casey and young Tom stood on the hill and looked down on the Joad place. A small unpainted house was mashed in at one corner, and it had been pushed off its foundation so that it slumped at an angle. Its blind front windows pointed at a spot in the sky well above the horizon. The fences were gone, and the cotton grew in the dooryard up against the house, and the cotton was about to the shed barn. The outhouse lay on its side. The cotton grew close against it. Where the dooryard had been pounded hard by the bare feet of children and by the stamping horses' hooves and by the broad wagon wheels, it was cultivated now, and the dark green, dusty cotton grew. Young Tom stared for a long time at the ragged willow beside the dry horse trough, at the concrete base where the pump had been. "Jesus," he said at last, "hell must have popped here. There ain't nobody living there." At last he moved quickly down the hill, and Casey followed him. He looked into the barn shed, deserted, a little ground straw on the floor, and at the mule stall in the corner. And as he looked in there was a skittering on the floor, and a family of mice faded in under the straw. Joad paused at the entrance to the tool shed lean-to, and no tools were there. A broken plow point, a mess of a hay wire in the corner, and an iron wheel from the hay rake, and rat gnawed mule collar. A flat gallon oil can crusted with dirt and oil, and a pair of torn overalls hanging on the nail. "There ain't nothing left," said Joad. "We had pretty nice tools, and there ain't nothing left." Casey said, "If I was still a preacher, I'd say the arm of the Lord had been struck. But now I don't know what happened. I've been away. I didn't hear nothing." They walked toward the concrete wall cap, walked to the cotton plants to get to it, and the poles were forming on cotton, and the land is cultivated. "We never planted here," Joad said. "We always kept this clear. Why, you can't get a horse in now without tromps of cotton." They paused at the dry watering trough, and the proper weeds that should grow under a trough were gone, and the old thick wood of the trough was dry and cracked. On the wall cap, the bolts had held up the pump, stuck up their threads rusty, and the nuts gone. Joad looked into the tube of the well and spat and listened. A dropped cloud of water, the well listened. "She was a good well," he said. "I can't hear water." He seemed reluctant to go to the house. He dropped clod after clod down the well. "Maybe they're all dead," he said. But somebody would have told me. I'd got a word some way. Maybe they left a jetter or something to tell in the house. Would you have known it you was coming out?" "I don't know," said Joad. "No, I guess not. I didn't know myself until maybe a few weeks ago." "Let's look into the house. She's all pushed out of shape. Something knocked the hell out of her." They walked slowly toward the sagging house. Two of the supports of the roof were pushed out so that the roof flopped down on one end, and the house corner was crushed in. Through a maze of splintered wood at the room of the corner was visible. The front door hung open inward, and a low, strong gate across the front door hung outward on leather hinges. Joad stopped at the step. A 12-by-12 timber. "Doorstep's here," he said, "but they're gone, or Ma's dead." He pointed to the low gate across the front door. "If Ma was anywheres about, the gate'd be shut and locked. And that's one thing she's always done, seen that gate was shut." His eyes were warm, and ever since the pig got in over Jacob's Billy, Millie Jacobs was just out the barn. She'd come in a while the pig was still eating it. Well, Millie Jacobs was in a family way, and she went out raving. Never did get over it, touched ever since, but Ma took a lesson from it. She never left the pig gate open, lest she was in the house herself. Never did forget. No, they're gone, or dead." He climbed to the split porch and looked in the kitchen. The windows were broken out by throwing rocks on the floor, and the floor and walls sagged steeply away from the door. The sifted dust was on the boards. Joad pointed to the broken glass and the rocks. "Kids," he said. "They'll go 20 miles to bust a window. I done it myself. They'll know when a house is empty. They'll know. That's the first thing kids do when folks move out." The kitchen was empty of furniture. The stove gone, and the round stovepipe hole in the wall was showing light. On the sink shelf lay an old beer opener with a broken fork with its wooden handle gone. Joad slipped cautiously around the room. The floor groaned under his weight, and an old copy of the Philadelphia Ledger was on the floor against the wall. Its chairs, nothing. On a wall, a picture of an Indian girl in color labeled Red Wing. A bed slat leaning against the wall, and in one corner, a woman's high-buttoned shoe, curled up at the toe and broken over in the instep. Joad picked it up and looked at it. "I remember this," he said. "That was Ma's. It's all wore out now. Ma liked them shoes, had 'em for years. No, they went out and took everything." The sun lowered until it came through an angled end windows now, and it flashed on the edges of the broken glass. Joad turned at last and went out across the porch. He sat down at the edge of it and rested his bare feet on the 12-by-12 step. The evening light was on the fields, and the cotton plants threw long shadows on the ground, and the molting willow tree threw a long shadow. Casey sat beside Joad. "They never wrote you nothing?" he asked. "No, like I said, they wasn't people to write. Pa could write, but he didn't like to. It gave him the shivers to write. He could work out a catalog order as good as the next fella, but he wouldn't write no letters just for ducks." They sat side by side, staring off into the distance. Joad laid his rolled coat on the porch beside him. His independent hands rolled a cigarette, smoothed it, and lighted it. He inhaled deeply and blew the smoke through his nose. "Something's wrong," he said. "I can't put my finger on it. I got an itch that something's wronger than hell." "Just the house pushed around and my folks gone," Keith said. "Right over there the ditch was, where I done some baptizing. You wasn't mean, but you was tough. Hung on to that little girl's pigtail like a bulldog. We baptized you both in the name of the Holy Ghost, and still you hung on. Old Tom says hole him in the water. So I shove your head down till you start bubbling before you let go of the pigtail. You wasn't mean, but you was tough. Sometimes a tough kid grows up with a big jolt in the spirit in him." A lean gray cat came sneaking out of the barn and crept through the cotton plants to the end of the porch. It leapt silently up to the porch and crept low-bellied toward the men. It came a place between and behind two, and then it sat down, its tail stretched out straight to the floor, and the last inch of it flicked. The cat sat and looked off into the distance where the men were looking. Joad glanced around at it. "By God, look who's here. Somebody stayed." He put out his hand, and the cat leapt away out of reach and sat down and licked the pads of its lifted paw. Joad looked at it, and his face was puzzled. "I know what's the matter," he cried. "That cat just made me figure what's wrong." "Seems to me there's lots wrong," said Casey. "No, it's more than just the place. Why didn't the cat just move off with some neighbors, with the rances? How come nobody ripped some lumber off this house? Ain't been nobody here for 3 or 4 months, and nobody's stole no lumber. Nice planks in the barn shed, pretty good planks in the house, window frames, and nobody's took 'em. That ain't right. That's what's bothering me, and I couldn't catch hold of her." "Well, what's the figure out of you?" Casey reached down and slipped off his sneakers and wriggled his long toes on the step. "I don't know. Seems like there aren't any neighbors. If there was, they would be nice planks here. Why, Jesus Christ." Albert Rance took his family, kids and dogs, all into Oklahoma City for the Christmas. They was going to visit Albert's cousin. Well, folks around here thought Albert moved away saying nothing. Figured maybe he got debts or some women squaring off at him. When Albert came back a week later, there wasn't nothing left in the house. Stove was gone, bed's gone, window frame's gone, and 8 feet of planking was off the south side of the house so you could look right through her. He come driving home just as Muley Grace was going away with 3 doors and the well pump. Took Albert 2 weeks driving around the neighborhood before he got his stuff back. Casey scratched his toes luxuriously. "Didn't nobody give him an argument? All of them just give the stuff up? Sure, they wasn't stealing it. They thought he left, and they just took it. He got all of it back, all but a sofa pillar. Velvet with a picture of an Injun on it. Albert claimed Grandpa got it, claimed Grandpa got Injun blood. That's why he wants the picture. Well, Grandpa did get her, but he didn't give a damn about the picture on it. He just liked her. He used to pack her around, and he'd put her wherever he was going to sit. He never would give her back to Albert. Says Albert wants this pillow so bad, let him come and get her. But he never came. But he better come shooting, 'cause I'll blow his goddamn stinking head off if he comes messing around my pillow." So finally Albert give up and made Grandpa a present out of the pillow. It gave Grandpa the whole damn bed of feathers, but he never got no feather bed. One time Pa got mad at a skunk under the house. Pa slapped the skunk with 2x4, and Ma burned all Grandpa's feathers so he could live in the house. He laughed. Grandpa's a tough old bastard. Just sat on the Injun pillow and let Albert come and get her. "Why," he says, "I'll take that squirt and wring him out like a pair of drawers." The cat crept close between the men again until its tail lay flat. Its whiskers jerked now and then, and the sun dropped low towards the horizon, and the dusty air was red and golden. The cat reached out a gray, questioning paw and touched Joad's coat. He looked around. "Hell, I forgot the turtle. I ain't gonna pack it all over hell." He unwrapped the land turtle and pushed it under the house, but in a moment it was out, headed southwest as it had been from the first place. The cat leaped at it and struck its straining head and slashed its moving feet. The old hard humorous head was pulled in, and the thick tail slapped under the shell, and then the cat grew tired of waiting for it and walked off. The turtle headed on southwest again. Young Tom, Joad, and the preacher watched the turtle go, waving its legs and boosting its high, heavy dome shell towards the southwest. The cat crept along the back for a while, but in a dozen yards it arched its back to a strong top bough and yawned, and came stealthily back toward the seated men. "Where the hell you suppose he's going?" said Joad. "I've seen turtles all my life. They're always going someplace. They always seem to want to get there." The gray cat seated itself, and behind them again. It blinked slowly. The skin over its shoulders jerked toward under a flea, and then slipped slowly back. The cat lifted a paw and inspected it. It flicked its claws out, and again experimentally, and it licked its pad with its shell-pink tongue. The red sun touched the horizon and spread out like a jellyfish, and the sky above it seemed much brighter and more alive than it had been. Joad unrolled his new yellow shoes from his coat, and he brushed his dusty feet with his hand before he slipped them on. The preacher was staring off across the field, said, "Somebody's coming, look, down there, right through the cotton." Joad looked where Casey's finger was pointed. "Coming afoot," he said. "Can't see him until the dust raises. Who the hell's coming here?" They watched the figure approaching in the evening light, and the dust it raised in the reddened setting sun. "Man," said Joad. The man drew closer, and he walked past the barn. Joad said, "Why, I know him. You know, that's Muley Graves. Hey, Muley, how are you?" The approaching man stopped, started by the call, and then he came on quickly. He was a lean man, rather short. His movements were jerky and quick. He carried a gunny sack in his hand. His blue jeans were pale at the knee and seat, and he wore an old black suit coat, stained and spotted, the sleeves torn loose from his shoulders and back, and ragged holes worn through his elbows. The black hat was stained as his coat, and as the band, torn half free, flopped up and down, he walked. Muley's face was smooth and unwrinkled, but it wore a truculent look of a bad child. The mouth held tight and small, and the little eyes half scowling, half petulant. "You remember Muley?" Joad said softly to the preacher. "Oops. Hi." "Who's that?" the advancing man called. Joad did not answer. Muley came close, very close, before he made out the faces. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. "It's Tommy Joad. Then when'd you get out, Tommy?" He dropped his sack to the ground. 2 days ago," said Joad. "Took a little time to hitchhike home. And look where I find. Where's my folks, Muley? What's the house all smashed up for and cotton planted in the dooryard?" "By God, it's lucky I come by," said Muley, "'cause old Tom worried himself. When they was fixing to move, I was sitting in the kitchen here. I just told Tom I wasn't gonna move, by God. I told him that." Tom says, I'm worrying myself about Tommy. Suppose he comes home and they ain't nobody here. What'll he think?" I says. "Why don't you write down a letter?" And Tom says, "Maybe I will. I'll think about her. But if I don't, you keep your eye out for Tommy if you're still around." "I'll be around," I says. "I'll get around till hell freezes over. There ain't nobody can run a guy the name of Graves out of this country. And they ain't done it either." Joad said impatiently, "Where's my folks? Tell you about standing up to them later, but where's my folks?" "Well, they was gonna stick out when the bank came tractoring off to your place. Your grandpa stood here with a rifle and he blowed the headlights off a cat, but she just came on the same. Your grandpa didn't want to kill the guy driving the cat, and that was Willie Feely, and Willie knowed it, so he just come on and bumped the hell out of the house. Old Tom just stood there cussing. It didn't do no good. When he sees the cat come busting through the house and gave her a shake like a dog shakes a rat, well, it took something out of Tom. Kinda got into him. He ain't ever been the same since." "Where's my folks?" Joad spoke angrily. "What I'm telling you. Took 3 trips with your Uncle John's wagon. Took the stove and the pump and the beds. You should have seen them beds go with your kids and your grandma and grandpa sitting up against the headboard. And your brother Noah sitting there smoking a cigarette and spitting all over the wagon." Joad opened his mouth to speak. "They're all at your Uncle John's," Muley said quickly. "Oh, all at John's. Well, what are they doing there? Now stick to her for a second, Muley. Just stick to her. In just a minute, you can go your own way. What are they doing there?" "Well, they've been chopping cotton, all of them, even the kids and your grandpa. Getting money together so they can shove on west. Gonna buy a car and shove on west where it's easy living. There ain't nothing here. 50 cents a clean acre for chopping cotton, and folks begging for the chance to chop." "And they ain't gone yet?" "No," said Muley. "Not that I know. Last I heard, 4 days ago, when I seen your brother Noah out shooting jackrabbits, and he says they're aiming to go in about 2 weeks. John got his notice and got to sit off. You just go about 8 miles to John's place, and you find your folks piled in John's house like gophers in a winter burrow." "Okay," said Joad. "Now you can ride your own way. You ain't changed a bit, Muley. If you want to tell something off northwest, you paint your nose straight southeast." Muley said translucently. "You ain't changed either. You was a smart aleck kid, and you're still a smart aleck. You ain't telling me how to skin my life by chance yet." Joad grinned. "No, I ain't. If you wanted to drive your head into a pile of broken glass, there ain't nobody can tell you different. You know this here preacher, don't you, Muley? Rev Casey?" "Why, sure. Didn't look over. Remember him well." Casey stood up and the two shook hands. "Glad to see you again," said Muley. "You ain't been around for a hell of a long time." "I've been off asking questions," said Casey. "What happened here? Why they kicking folks off the land?" Muley's mouth snapped so tightly that the parrot's beak in the middle of his upper lip slid down over his lip. He scowled. "Them sons of bitches," he said. "Them dirty sons of bitches, I tell you, man, I'm staying. You can't get rid of me. If they throw off, I'll be back, and they figure I'll be around. Why, I'll take a couple 3 and the sons of bitches along for the company." He patted a heavy weight on his side coat pocket. "I ain't going. My pa come here 50 years ago, and I ain't going," Joad said. "What's the idea of kicking folks off?" "Oh, they talked pretty about it." Sorry. "You know what kind of years we've been having? That's coming up and spoiling everything, so a man can't get enough crops to plug an ant's ass. and everybody got bills in the grocery. You know how it is. Well, the folks that owns the land said that we can't afford to keep no tenants, and they said they share tenants just to margin profit we can't afford to lose. And they says if we pull all our land into one piece, we can just hardly make our bay. So they tracted all the tenants off the land except me, and God, I ain't going. Tommy, you know me all your life. Damn right, said Joad, all my life. Well, you know I ain't a fool. I know this land ain't much good. Never was except for grazing. Never should have broke her up, and now she's caught and damn near to death. If only they didn't tell me I got off. Why, I'd probably be in California right now eating grapes and picking an orange when I wanted. But them sons of bitches says I gotta get off, and Jesus Christ, a man can't when he's told to. Sure, said Joad. I wonder Pa went so easy. I wonder Grandpa didn't kill nobody. I wonder never told Grandpa where to put his feet. And Ma ain't nobody you can push around neither. I seen her beat the hell out of a tin peddler with a live chicken once 'cause he gave her an argument. She said that the chicken in one hand and the axe in the other, about to cut its head off. She aimed to go for the peddler with an axe, but she forgot which hand was which, and she takes after the chicken. Couldn't even get the chicken when she got done. They wasn't nothing but a pair of legs in her hand. Grandpa throwed his hip out the joint laughing. How'd my folks go so easy? Well, that guy that came coming around was nice as pie. You gotta get off. It ain't my fault. Well, I says, whose fault is it? All going all nuts, the fella. It's the Shawnee Land and the Cattle Company. I just got orders. Who's Shawnee Land and Cattle Company? It ain't nobody. It's a company. Got a fella crazy. There ain't nobody you could lay for. A lot of folks just got tired of looking. It ain't nobody. It's a company. Got a fella crazy. There wasn't nobody you could lay for. A lot of folks just got tired looking for something to be mad at, but not me. I'm mad at all of it. I'm staying. A large red drop of sun lingered on the horizon and then dripped over and it was gone. And the sky was brilliant over the spot where it had gone. A torn cloud, like a bloody rag, hung over the spot where it's going. And the dust crept over the sky from the eastern horizon, and the darkness crept over the land from the east. The evening star flashed and glittered in the dust. The gray cat sneaked away from the open barn shed and passed inside like a shadow. Joad said, well, we ain't gonna walk no 8 miles to Uncle John's place tonight. My dog's is burned up. How's it if we go to your place, Muley? It's only about a mile. We won't do no good. Muley seemed embarrassed. My wife and the kids and her brother all took and went to California. There isn't nothing to eat. They wasn't mad at me, so they went. There was nothing to eat here. The preacher stirred nervously. We should have went too. You should have broke up the family. You shouldn't have broken up the family. I couldn't, said Muley Greaves. Something just wouldn't let me. Well, by God, I'm hungry, said Joad. 4 solemn years I've been eating right on the minute. My guts is yelling bloody murder. What you gonna eat, Muley? What you been getting for dinner? Muley seemed ashamed. Well, for a while I ate frogs and squirrels and prairie dogs sometimes. Had to do it. But now I got some wire nooses on the tracks and some dry stream bush. Get rabbits and sometimes a prairie chicken. Skunks get caught and coons too. He reached down and picked up a sack. He emptied it on the porch. 2 cottontails and a jackrabbit fell out and rolled over it limply, softly, and furry. God almighty, it's more than 4 years since I ate fresh-killed meat. Casey picked up one of the cottontails and held it in his hands. You sharing with us, Muley Greaves? Millie fidgeted in embarrassment. I ain't got no choice in the matter. He stopped on the ungracious sound of his own words. That ain't like I mean it. He stumbled. What I mean, if a fella's got something to eat and another fella's hungry, why the first fella ain't got no choice. I mean, suppose I pick up rabbits and go off somewheres and eat 'em, see? I see, said Casey. I can see that. Muley sees something here, Tom. Muley's got a hold of something. It's too big for him and it's too big for me. Young Tom rubbed his hands together. Who's got a knife? Let's get at these miserable rodents. Let's get at 'em. Muley reached in his pants pocket and produced a large horn-handled pocket knife. Tom took Joad from him, opened the blade and smelled it. He drove the blade again and into the ground and smelled it again, wiped it on his trouser leg and felt the edge with his thumb. Muley took a quart bottle in his hip pocket and set it on the porch. Go easy on that water. That's all there is. This here well's filled in. Tom took up a rabbit in his hand. One of you go get some bale wire out of the barn and we'll make a fire with some of the broken plank from the house. He looked at the dead rabbit. There ain't nothing easy to get as a rabbit, he said. He lifted the skin off the back, slid it with his fingers in the hole, and tore the skin off. It slipped off like a stocking. It slipped off to the body and the neck, just like the legs and the paws. Joad picked up the knife again and cut off his heads and feet. He laid the skin down, slit the rabbits along the ribs, and took the intestines out onto the skin. Then he threw the mess into the cotton field. The clean, muscled little body was ready. Joad cut off its legs and cut the meaty back into pieces. He was picking up the second rabbit when Casey came back with a snarled bale wire in his hands. Now build a fire and put some steaks up, said Joad. Jesus Christ, I'm hungry for these here creatures. He cleaned up and cut the rest of the rabbits and strung them on the wire. Muley and Casey tore splintered boards from the rack in the house corner. He started a fire, and they drove stake into the ground from each side to hold the wire. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 6. I'm sorry again for the little interruption in the middle. But yeah, so tune in soon for part 2 of chapter 6. Thanks so much. Bye.